What's up, everybody? This is Coach and the Kid with NBA head coach Don Casey, and I'm Nick Hadge. Coach, would you just want to tell us a little bit about your background and your experiences?
Well, we go back a long way. I started in the NBA about in 83, 4. So I stayed in the NBA for about 17, 18 years. Prior to that, I was coaching at Temple University for about 16 years. And from the league, I started in Chicago, pre-Jordan, and then went to San Diego Clippers, Los Angeles Clippers, and then back to Boston for the Big Three, Bird, McHale, Parrish, the original Big Three. And from there to New Jersey Nets with John Calipari. And when he left, I was an interim coach and stayed there for a year. And then in around 2000, they didn't pick up your option, which means sometimes as people said you got fired. And did a lot of work for the NBA internationally and Reebok. So it's been a good journey.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. We really appreciate you being on here. As you know, training camp is just getting started and media day is going on. Could you just give us a little insight of what's going on in practice right now? What are they going through? I know each team's a little different, but if you could just give us a little general.
Well, I think there's a couple things that, one, for the teams that have many new players from either draft or trade, we'll get into unit work, which would be offense, I think, at first, to see how they, play off each other, how they read and react. So they'll have a little bit of conditioning drills. But today the players are so conscious that they come into the camp in very good shape. And many have been doing special work prior to the camp. They will do slowly but surely breakdown drills, unit drills, as we said. And I think they'll do a lot of shooting to see if the players are getting back into a rhythm. And they have at least 6 pre-games where they'll do both. They'll put the veterans in and cautiously mix them with the draft players or the free agents. And then around games 5 or 6, I think they'll kind of get into the potential starting lineup. But it's a little, wait and see, trial and error time for many of the young. And it's a challenge for the big ones to get back in real shape and to see how they mix and mingle with the new players. And they'll figure that out within the 6 playoff games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something I find interesting is, when training camp happens, there's usually like a high amount of players, usually over the amount of roster spots available. How do you determine which players are going to be at the end of the roster, who are going to get those last spots?
Well, it pretty much declares itself by the player's performance. When we were there was no two-way, and the rosters were set that at 12, and they had like an injured list, quote unquote. So many would go to the injured list so you could bring in another player for 10 days or so. They've really straightened that out, I'm told. I'm not entirely familiar exactly what the rules are state, but they put in the time that the 2 days cannot go in till after 3 days of practice. And I would say it more or less, the coaches want it, they don't want to have to say, we selected you, because they want you to select them by your performance, which would be outstanding. They're all good players. But I think that's the biggest dilemma, if that's the word, of getting the new ones in with the veterans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like also training camp kind of happens, and then as the season progresses, everybody seems to forget about training camp. How important is training camp to a season? How how could a good training camp help you succeed in the season, or how could a bad training camp hurt you in the season?
Well, every team and every coach, they want to jump out of the gate. They want to win as many as they can, always. But early in the season, like the first year I was with the Celtics, I mean, it was so paramount in their minds to get a jump start that we ended up like 28-5, and then Bird got hurt. But I couldn't believe it because I haven't seen the intensity of players to that extent. So they want to get out quick because then it gives you a fallback. So if you got like 25 quick wins and then you run into an injury, which then could give you downside, so you get that gap of, say, 10 wins over the rest of them. So, yes, they all want to jump out.
Yeah. You mentioned Larry Bird, and I know you coached a lot of unbelievable players in your time. Were there any training camp stories that you remember now, maybe with just how intense training camp could be and everybody's kind of fighting for a spot and everybody feels that pressure to succeed right out the gate, like you mentioned? Were there any stories that you had?
There's always stories. I mean, the Birds had a lot of stories, but he was probably the first that I know of that we were measuring his minutes because of his severe back problem. So the training camp for him was, more getting loose, getting back in. We had to work him into shape. Now, back in those days, they had like 8, 9, 10 games of preseason, and it was longer. And since it's cut back with that, and Bird would, if we had 2 days, he would not work in the morning, he would work in the afternoon. And a lot of teams have that with a lot of players who have been either injured or like the guys coming back from the Olympics. I mean, they've been playing all season, the summer, and many of them are deep in the playoffs. So I would think like the LeBrons, Durants, et cetera, that training camp for them is not a project to get back into swing of things. They're in it. So each camp and each team has their own agenda. Some need a lot of time to get the young ones in. Some teams are so veteran bound that they'll piecemeal it. They won't play those guys as much. So it varies. But it's very important to come out unified and feeling, we can get this thing done.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it a little bit, the controversial topic of load management. That's a huge controversy now with players sitting out and prioritizing their body. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's overrated. I know Popovich started it. He was resting players on the road, and it became a problem. If I'm paying $125 for a ticket and you're sitting out dunking. Well, I mean, the league did not like that. It sounds like it's a proper thing to do, take care of the players, and for the playoffs. The load management, Bird played whenever he could. McHale played with a bad foot. They just played. That never entered in, excuse me, except we monitored Larry's minutes when his back was acting up. And it was very difficult in his case because he came out of the game. If people can watch tape, he didn't sit down. He laid on the floor. And that's how bad his back was. So, when he sat down, it's like stiffened up. We had heating pads, everything. So in those cases, which is an extreme, yes. But generally speaking, I think load management is not necessary, and it's been overstated and overused.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Just to transition a little bit into the NBA right now, Karl Anthony Towns just got traded to the New York Knicks. from Minnesota for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. What do you think about that trade? Do you think there's any winners or losers of that trade?
Well, trades are made for various reasons. One, to fill a spot, and I think that Towns can play low post, and I think the New York wanted that option. Randall's a good. He's a good gamer. Not the best defense, but he plays hard. Defensive can really, be a shot. And they got very good coaches at Minnesota, as you saw last year. So I think they both think they won. Then there's money involved, cap problems. I haven't read that much about it, but the scuttlebutt that I was talking with, that Downs' contract, which explodes, could possibly hurt Minnesota for the future with signing players. But I don't know the exact details. But I think Towns will do very well in New York.
Mm-hmm. After acquiring Towns, how do you think the Knicks match up with the Celtics now in the East?
I think it match up well. I think the East is getting tight, as the West is really tight. There'll be a lot of pressure on Philly, a lot of pressure on Milwaukee. But you got to knock off the champs, and the Celtics are not only good, but their coach does very good things. He's very innovative. He's not afraid to do anything. He's very interesting. And Nurse is getting Philly back with Maxey, which is a great player. And I'm sure, I don't know Miami's roster that well, but there's very good young coaching now in the NBA that have been assistants, worked their way up. Utah's got a nice young coach. And then you got the Tyronn Lue, who's been proven, J.J. Redick. Be interesting. Fortunately, he's got, 2 All-Stars to help him break in. But it's jammed, which is good, the East and the West.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you like?
Who do I like in the East? Well, I think the Celtics still are the favorites to come out. I think with their combination of spacing, being able to attack the rim, and also play both ends of the floor, I think is...
Well, who do you think will challenge him?
In the East, I think it will be between... I think the Bucks. I feel like the Bucks match up well with the Celtics because of the size that they have, having Giannis and Brook Lopez down there. I think in the past that has given the Celtics a little bit of challenges. We saw it a little bit last year in the regular season. Weren't able to see it in the playoffs because they didn't match up, but I think the Sixers could match up well too because of the star power and the firepower that they have now with Paul George, Maxey, and Embiid, the three of them. I think the Knicks as well could match up. Those three teams will match up well. The Knicks are in an interesting position because now with Towns being able to space the floor, they have kind of a similar matchup that the Celtics give other teams, and being able to have 5 guys who can space the floor, guys who also have size too, with Anunoby and Bridges being able to guard multiple positions, Josh Hart out there being able to guard multiple positions. So I think the Knicks kind of have a similar roster construction to the Celtics in that sense. You touched on coaching a little bit, and as we look around the league right now, a lot of head coaches now were assistant coaches for programs, and you were an assistant coach who became a head coach. How did that experience help you to be a head coach?
Well, it does. Chris Ford before he became a head coach, was assistant for 7-8 years under 2 or 3 different head coaches. In the beginning, it was the players that became coaches. And not to underrate that, but the pro game is so different from the college game that having ex-players as coaches initially made sense. 24-second clock, quarters rather than halves, 6 fouls. The lane's much wider, They have illegal defensive rules. So it's stressful earning. But being an assistant for a few years, yeah, and some guys just wait their time. But if you're like me, older when you got in, it is really advantageous to get with a young coach that has an upside and, help him to stay in the league as long as he can, which means it's good for you. So they're doing more now. They're not plucking guys out of college because the college guys are making money, and they found out it wasn't that successful. So yes, I think they'll keep doing such as assistants come up the ladder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how important is a coach to a team? Because you see with Joe Mazzulla when he got hired with the Celtics, a lot of people may think that the roster is so good and that's the reason why they won solely because of the roster, and they think that any coach could have won with that roster. What do you think about that?
Well, the roster, of course, the roster was good for Pat Riley when he broke in as a coach, but the ones is what do you do with the roster? Do you run? Do you pick and roll? I mean, do all the. That's how you judge. And I think he utilized his talent well and put him in a position where they could express their talent and let him go. He didn't overcoach. We compare it to like Spielberg. Spielberg, great director, but his job is to make sure that the action or the star that he's putting him in a terrific position to show how good he is. Whether it's Tom Hanks or whatever. So Tom Hanks would be LeBron James. So it's what you do with him, the roster. The adage that anyone could do that, that's an old adage. It doesn't make sense because some people would come in and screw it up, by doing overcoaching, doing slow down, things of that nature. Now he, surprisingly, as a Division II coach, he was.
Yeah, he was.
He'd come in and be so adjustment. He made the adjustment quickly. So you have to give a lot of credit to Boston and Brad Stevens, who's done a tremendous job himself as a coach and now in the front office. So yes, I think that he picked the right guy.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned talking about what you do with a roster. What was your philosophy as a coach? What did you emphasize as a coach? What was your game plan?
Well, it varied because, so the Clippers were so young. And it even varied at Boston because as the season went on, things happened. Either players were struggling or players got hurt. But generally speaking, the philosophy was really, I would say, no philosophy. He just grinded out. You knew the defensive rules that you want to engage in, and you try to construct a better offensive set once you're in a half-court situation compared to just running and shooting threes. So, which is not today. There's no post making of significance. Back then, every team had a center. Every team. And today, nobody has. Well, maybe one or two, but they don't play downtown. No. Like Manute Bol.
Yeah. Who would you say was the hardest team to prep for and game plan against?
Well, when you're like I want to use the Celtics because it wasn't like you should win, could win. The feeling was you must win, and they could every game. So every game, the other team, no matter who it was going after you. But Detroit back then with Chuck Daly, his different rules, Phil Jackson, Pat Riley in New York. They really prepared well against us. It was quite difficult. But Bird managed to help you.
Yeah. Also, just transitioning to Dikembe Mutombo. I don't know if you heard, but he passed away today. Did you have any chances to coach him or be around him? Yeah, Mutombo.
Yeah. No, I went on a trip to Johannesburg with him. It's sad because we had Joe Wolf the other day. The big players are dying. I mean, the 6'10" to 7 foot players, and the African American player seems to have more heart condition. If he died suddenly, I'm guessing that's what it was. I didn't see that he had been sick, but Darryl Dawkins, Moses Malone, you can go down the stretch. But that's two players, and coaches don't like losing players.
Mm-hmm.
That's bad. Where was he? Atlanta?
The Mutombo? Yeah, he played. We played with the Sixers with Atlanta.
Yeah, where did he die?
I don't know where he died, but I believe that he passed away from brain cancer. Is what
That's
I believe.
right.
Yeah,
That's
believe
right.
that's what came
He was
out.
a character.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Did you have many experiences with him?
Well, only his, taunting to some extent. He and Jason Williams used to get into a real physical tirade, like Jason Williams and Rodman. But Mutombo was good. That's a shame.
Yeah, you talk about a character, and then you also brought up Jason Williams. Who was like the most fun, exciting player that you coached?
Well, exciting is one thing. Jason Williams was a unique, typical New York, North Jersey character that really played hard. Paul Silas made him into something. He really took pride in rebounding. He was he liked to go out. What is the story that was, not Chuck, the other coach, said we're going to teach him, so we're going to have practice at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's fine. And he came in, obviously, and he came in after being out all night. It wasn't like you're punishing him. He was out playing around, having fun. So, but he could, as long as they can perform, and he could, he was physically strong and all, then he got serious and calmed himself down. But Bird was exciting because he was, the trash we would sometimes hear, not all the time. Rodman was very interesting. Very interesting, to say the least. Off the top, I had to think more, but that stick out, yeah.
Yeah, what is it like coaching a player whose game is based on creativity and might have some risky plays in there, like a Jason Williams or even a Larry Bird? How do you gauge where, I guess, their leash is and how much ability they're able to be creative?
Well, Larry would like his area, though. He could play all around down in the right box. It was like, they call it the bird cage. Jason was down there. But most of the guys, Reggie Lewis, who unfortunately died, was very creative. You just, give him space. Other players would recognize, like we used to put him at the top of the circle with the ball, and everyone else would just move out a little bit, even Parrish. But it wasn't as open as it is today because there was post players. Mikhail Parrish, Joe Klein, Dino Raja, who ended up in the Hall of Fame. So, you're not going to put these guys out and about. So it was a different culture and physical structure. Is that if you have post players, you got to honor them. They got to get their touches. Like Shaquille, there's no more Shaquilles. There's no more anybody because of the one and done. And the one and done rule just killed the post players because all those guys stayed in college, 2-3 years before they came out. So Not really. I mean, they all had their own little character traits.
Yeah, you talked about post play and how that's kind of getting more and more eliminated from the game today. Do you have a preference on how the game is played? Do you look down upon maybe the high volume of 3-point shooting, or do you prefer the back then playing predicated around the post?
I think the coaches have to deal with who they have and the style. I mean, that's the style today. And who do they have? I mean, like New York had 4 guards from Villanova. Now they got 3. Now the question is, is Towns going to get touches? I mean, he can shoot, but they got a lot of shooters on there. Mm-hmm. So I think they'll put him down inside. Today it's an outside game. Though you saw in the Olympics that we needed a little more structure in the offense, particularly the last game. So there's no more inside out as it was back. Like you had to throw it to Mutombo. Had to throw it into Cartwright, Walton. I mean, in that generation. That's not prevalent today, and I don't see it changing. It won't change. The big guy is almost a dinosaur. Mm-hmm. Not quite, but almost.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that too. We saw how the game transitioned from a post-oriented basketball type of game into now where it's all predicated around the 3-point shot. You think that continues, or is there any way for the game to kind of change, or is that how it's going to be for?
I don't have the inside thing. So, like, to give you an example, Reggie Lewis would post up. Mark Jackson. Mm-hmm. We put Marbury down there. I don't know who could guard LeBron if he's down in the post. I think he could score. Run him down there, run him out, post up the guards. I don't see anything wrong with that if you don't have any big guys. But I don't see it changing. I don't know the landscape of the college scene of big players coming into the league. Purdue had a couple kids. Yeah, where are they?
I believe that's Zach Edey. Are you talking about the really tall post player? I think he's on the Grizzlies now. It's looking like he's probably going to play the 5 there with Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4.
He's playing down low.
Yeah, so
that'll be interesting.
That'll be interesting to see how his game translates to the NBA because he's centered around post play and his size. So speaking about post play, you were able to be around Bill Walton, who unfortunately passed away recently. What was your relationship with him, and how was his game and watching him every day?
Well, he was at the end. When I came in with the Clippers, he was here with Jimmy Lynam. Played maybe 40%. Interesting. A very, very, very intelligent player, coached by John Wooden and Jack Ramsey, and knew the inside game. And I think he was disappointed in himself that he couldn't play like he wanted to finish up because he's had these multiple surgeries. But everybody, as you saw on the news and so forth, everybody that was around him, and I was around him pretty, not a whole lot, enough, felt like you knew him because he was an outgoing, friendly. The world's a good place, and he did a lot of quiet, good stuff. But he was an interesting. That would be one of the more interesting characters of the league. Unfortunately, cancer, which is getting everybody now, got him, and he'll be missed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was able to meet him several times over the years. I was lucky enough. Last year, I played basketball at San Diego Mesa College, and one of the assistant coaches, Adam Walton, obviously he's the son of Bill, and that was cool. Bill was able to come to a couple of our games, and I'd see him on the sideline. I've been to, he had a book signing back in the day I was able to visit. So, I mean, yeah, just speaking on Bill, like the short time that I was able to meet him, I mean, it felt like you knew him, like you said.
Yeah, he's a very outgoing, gracious, did a lot of work behind the scenes at Grossmont Hospital, the Lucky Duck Foundation that he got involved with. That it's really strong year for the homeless, and Bill was part of that. And it's unfortunate because he could do a lot of good things that could happen for people. But in the UCLA days, he was a love-hate guy. Mm-hmm. But he could play.
Yeah, you got to see him at the end of his career when he was around Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale.
Well, I wasn't on the scene in 86, 87. I got there in 89. Bill had left, and it was just Bird McHale Parrish with that. But the stories of Bill, and I used to meet him at D.C. Aikens when he was doing a lot of physical therapy after the Celtics. I mean, he still had ongoing problems, living, not just playing. Mm-hmm. And but he had a lot of back problems, but he got he wouldn't bore you with his problems. Mm-hmm. He was one of those guys.
Yeah. Well, I guess towards the end of his career, he was still able to make an impact with that 86 team. I know you weren't a part of that team. How was he able to match up still, even at, the end of his career? He was still able to be the sixth man of the year that year and make a huge impact.
Well, his impact was felt because he still could run, and they threw it in the post, and he could still score somewhat, but he could really dish it out to the people cutting. There's a lot of highlights if you go on YouTube, but he brought an energy, a little bit of a character that spurred him on. I think that he and Pistol Pete, they're two outsiders that came in and really made an impact with the Celtics. They really enjoyed him.
Mm-hmm. Talking about big players, today I feel like the game is kind of shifting towards bigger players who can do everything on the court, kind of like a Kevin Durant. Right now is Victor Wembanyama. Have you been able to see him play, or what do you think about his style of play?
I haven't. Where's he from?
He's on the Spurs. He's a 7'3". He can score at all three levels.
France kid?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I had some relations with the French basketball. One of my college players, Terrence Stansbury, that went into the league for a short while, then went over to France and became, France all over. I was talking with them. That even in fact, the game, I said, you're in an Olympic game. Why didn't he go down and just throw it to him? And they did for about 3 times. So the generation is what it is. They grow up in that, and what normally you used to get 2 points for, now you get 3. But the old adage that you can always get fouled down there, so you score and get fouled, but that is slipping away. I'm going to be very interested in how Pop uses him this year.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I think we covered all the topics we were planning on covering today. Is there anything else you wanted to add or talk about or emphasize?
Not really. I'm surprised how much you know.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm up to date with that. No, I think it's good to explore. It's a wide range here. The league is going to be in its 75th year. Mm-hmm. The 50th year, I can remember being part of that. Now, I think also that you're going to see teams that are a little bit impacted. That will the West is going to be very tight. There's no real, except I think the Celtics, real team to chase. And Celtics, I think, are the one East and West. Whether the Lakers is a critical year for them because they're old. The Lakers are. I mean, the Clippers are right there, though. You know, who knows with Leonard? But no, it'll be a very good NBA year, and I'm hearing that from people that the colleges are going to be, you know, not just the Power Five. There's going to be a lot of, like right here in San Diego State. I went to practice last week, and they got 15 new players.
Did they really?
15.
Jeez.
They got one back from last year. So, I mean, there's where training camp comes in, where they can run off to see like how these players play off each other.
Yeah.
That's the big clue. In Boston, because they're there all that time, they knew each other, and that helps. So, but I think the league's going to be interesting, and I'm hearing good things about college.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited to get into that more with you as we record more podcasts.
Oh, we're coming back?
I mean, shoot, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to us on Coaching the Kid. I'm Nick Hadge with NBA head coach Don Casey. We'll see you next time.